So in today's video, I'll be counting down my top 10 favorite roller coasters at Knott's Berry Farm. They have exactly 10 coasters, and in a nice twist, I actually got to ride all of them, which hasn't happened in too many parks for me. I visited this park for the first time a few months ago in December 2018. I felt that this was such a great, well-rounded park, maybe the most well-rounded major park in Southern California. SeaWorld San Diego is gorgeous and has great shows and exhibits, but they don't have a ton of rides and they don't have much for the thrill seekers. Six Flags Magic Mountain has an extensive, awesome roller coaster collection, but they do lack in theming and some other areas. Disneyland has amazing theming and plenty of rides, but they also don't have much for the thrill seekers, and same story with Universal Studios Hollywood. Knott's Berry Farm has plenty for everyone. Great family rides, kids rides, medium thrill, high thrill coasters, shows, theming, they've got it all. They may not be the best at anything, but they are good at everything. As a coaster nerd, I was focusing mostly on the roller coasters, but I did take the time to enjoy plenty of the other things that the park has to offer. Fortunately, I visited on a Monday and a Thursday while school was in session, so there was little to no wait for the rides. So with all that said, here are my favorite coasters at Knott's Berry Farm. Number 10 is GhostRider. I'm not much of a fan of Wow Mouse coasters, and this one had very awkward and uncomfortable leg restraints. If you're over 5 foot tall, this will be an uncomfortable ride. Just ride it to get the credit and then never again. Number 9 is Sierra Sidewinder. This is a spinning coaster that doesn't spin. It seems to just rock back and forth. I never saw any of the cars spin all the way around even once while I was watching. Nothing bad here, just a whole lot of nothing. Number 8 is Timberliner Twister. It was a pretty good kiddie coaster. My friend and I are both under 5'9", so we were allowed to ride by rule. I hear that the 5'9" height maximum is not enforced, but you should note that they do have that listed as a maximum, and they might enforce it on you. Number 7 is going to be Pony Express. I really enjoyed this family launch coaster. It's a gentle launch, and it doesn't go very high or fast, but it is a very unique ride, especially with the unusual riding position and lower back restraints. It's a very underrated and enjoyable coaster, but the short length does keep it from moving up a spot or two. Number 6 is Jaguar, with an exclamation point. This is another great family coaster. It's very smooth, and it's a long ride as well. The length is why it is ahead of Pony Express. It has some height and some speed, but it's definitely not intense at all. It's a ride that everyone can enjoy. Number 5 is Silver Bullet, the B&M invert, with 6 inversions. I'm not the biggest fan of inverted coasters, and I've been very outspoken in how much I severely dislike B&M's over-the-shoulder restraints that put rock-hard bars right next to your head. I hate those restraints so much. They're far worse than the ones on Aero or Vekoma coasters. And yes, Silver Bullet has those horrible restraints. In addition to the B&M rattle that this ride had when I was there, I got so much headbanging on my first ride that I ended the first day saying that this was the worst ride in the park. I'm not the type to give a coaster credit for doing great moves if it hurts me. If you cause me pain, you're going to the bottom of the list, even if it has some great elements. But on my second day, I tried it again, this time grabbing the restraints tight and leaning my head forward as far as I can. This works like a charm on all Aero and Vekoma coasters I've ridden, but it usually doesn't work on B&Ms because you have to lean your head so much further forward due to their restraints being much taller and bulkier. But it actually did work on Silver Bullet. I was able to avoid the headbanging, and with that, I could actually enjoy what the coaster was doing, and that moved it up my list. Number 4 is Montezooma's Revenge, the Schwarzkopf Shuttle Loop. This is the same thing as the defunct Greased Lightning at Astroworld, which I rode back in 2002 as my 8th lifetime coaster credit. In addition to that nostalgia for me, Montezooma's Revenge is also an intense coaster. You get a moderately intense 55-mile-an-hour launch and a forceful vertical loop. Then you go up an incline before running the course backwards. It's quite simple and not a long ride, but it is very fun with some nice intensity. And even though it goes upside down, there are thankfully no over-the-shoulder restraints, only lap bars. I hope they never get rid of this coaster. Now for my top 3, and all 3 of these rides could be your favorite at the park. They are all excellent, and I have them all ranked very close to each other in my overall rankings. Number 3 for me is going to be GhostRider. This is a CCI wooden coaster that got a GCI retracking. It is very intense with some crazy laterals and great airtime, and it's a very long ride. Some people call this coaster glossy smooth. It definitely wasn't for me, but I also wouldn't call it rough. It seems to fall perfectly in the middle. Not rough, but it still feels like a Woody. I really like that about it. And it does give an excellent night ride as well. I would argue that this might be the most intense ride in the park. Number 2 is going to be Xcelerator, the Intamin launch coaster. I'm a huge fan of launch coasters, and I'm an even bigger fan of all things Intamin. This is the most powerful launch I've ever experienced. 0 to 82 miles an hour in just 2.3 seconds. I've done Top Thrill Dragster, and even though that reaches 120 miles an hour, it takes more time to get there, so that launch isn't as powerful. Although I did still like that ride better. But Xcelerator's launch is still fantastic, and you get incredible airtime on the top hat. I did find myself missing the twisted drop that Dragster has, and it seems like you reach that top hat immediately after the launch. The extra figure 8 section is a nice touch, although you don't get much force or airtime out of it, at least I didn't. Out of my 14 laps on this, I did only one front row ride, which is definitely the best row. That launch feels even more powerful in the front. But the line for the front was usually quite long, while all other rows were walk-ons. As a side note, the individual row queue is annoyingly confusing, as each row queue actually feeds 2 rows on the train. That should be fixed, especially with how the front row line also feeds into row 2. Nobody is going to wait in that long line only to settle for row 2, but the ride itself is definitely amazing. And my number 1 coaster at Knott's Berry Farm goes to HangTime, the new for 2018 Gerstlauer Infinity Dive Coaster. This got overshadowed by other new rides in the year like Steel Vengeance, Twisted Timbers, and Time Traveler, all of which are better than HangTime, but this ride still is excellent and deserves plenty of praise. The vertical lift hill is probably the most intense part of the ride. The hold at the top isn't as intimidating as it looks. Plus, when the B&M dive coasters release you, you get released right into the dive. On HangTime, after the hold, you crawl forward a little bit before the dive. But it is an awesome drop with great airtime, and you then get thrown into 5 inversions with a great ejector airtime hill mixed in. The second inversion has some amazing hang time on it as well. Best thing of all, despite the vertical lift hill, the beyond vertical drop, and going upside down 5 times, there are no over-the-shoulder restraints. Lap bars only. Thank you, Gerstlauer. Thank you, Knott's Berry Farm. This creates not only being able to experience these elements with a guarantee of no headbanging, but it also gives you a feeling of exposure and freedom that you typically don't get with coasters that perform these kind of maneuvers. In fact, I didn't even know what the inversions were during all of my rides. I didn't realize that we had done a corkscrew and cobra roll. Those inversions are typically painful ones because other coasters doing those have those bars right next to your head, and your head slams into those bars on those inversions. But with no chance of headbanging, a corkscrew and cobra roll feel very different, and they are actually quite enjoyable. In regards to intensity, I don't find this to be overly intense. They perform these crazy maneuvers in such a fluid way that it doesn't feel that intense. I would actually say that this is only the 3rd most intense coaster at the park, behind Xcelerator and GhostRider. So the ride experience is not as crazy as it looks, but the fun factor is off the charts. To nitpick a little, just to cover all bases, it is a very short ride. From the drop to the final brakes, it's about 33 seconds, which is quite short, but it's still longer than Xcelerator or Top Thrill Dragster. It's longer than the RMC Raptors or Twisted Cyclone or one side of Twisted Colossus, but it is over pretty quick. When I was there was also a slight rattle in the front row, but none in the back. That can change from day to day. You might find it to be reversed, or there might be no rattle at all anywhere when you go. On this ride, I also got 14 rides on it, so I did plenty of rides in the front and back, plus I tried rows 2 and 3, maybe one time each. There are 4 rows on it with 4 seats per row. This ride also has a great light package on it at night. Sometimes you can catch the lights synced up to music that's playing, so if you don't want to ride it, you can just enjoy watching it. It's a beautiful coaster, and it fits in with the boardwalk and beach theme nicely, and it is a very fun ride. So that's my list. But have you been to Knott's Berry Farm? And if so, what did you think of the park and their coasters? Let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching.